meeting to order. Worth County Conference Board. Andrea, can we check for a quorum?
All right, so I've got Joe,
Yes.
I've got Kari, Kim on Zoom,
Yes.
I've got Bradley, I've got Kyle on call-in, Nick Bailey, John Bork, I've got Rick from Hamlintown, Rebecca from Joyce, Corey from Kensett, no Timothy O'Keefe. We've got Mayor Molly. I apologize. Sorry, that was totally my bad.
You're probably like, what? What
And
happened
I've
here?
got AJ, Mark, and Enos, so we are good to go.
Okay. I would then entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Who was that? Bradley? Who was the second? Mark?
Good.
Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Let me just take a second, just to introduce myself for some of you. I'm
Yeah.
Cindy Thompson.
Yep.
I've been an assessor here for 6 years, and I grew up in Kensett, so moved away, of course, because I wanted to get away from small. Somehow ended up back here about 10 years ago. And this is Andrea Miley. She's been with us for 3 years now. Very valuable in our office. And then we do have Judy. She's my chief deputy and she's not feeling well. And then we did have Jay Hines, who's part-time, and he's got pool activities tonight. Otherwise he'd be here. So.
All right.
I'm gonna go around the room.
Well,
Do you want to do it that way?
I'm AJ Stone. I'm
Let's
Worth
do
County
that.
Supervisor.
Okay.
Kari Osheim, I'm on the Lake Road School Board.
Bradley Richardson, with the North County School Board. Joe Rouse, and his friends. Rich Stolbrock, Mayor Hamilton. Greg Thompson.
Mike Stevens.
Ian Silver, Supervisor. Doug Moley, Mayor Northwood. Parks County Supervisor for West Florida County.
And Sam Warren is the IT guy.
He's sort of stuck here.
Yeah.
We
Had to stay
appreciate
late
you coming
for
in,
us.
though. We do, so.
Okay, well. Where are we going off of?
Are they pretty much?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with a business discussion, I guess, Cindy.
Just Go into it, the examining board.
Yeah.
And so we've got some backup here. We didn't do a PowerPoint this time, but just for education, we tried to put, especially as we get new members, you know, what the conference board is responsible for. And so we tried to give a lot of information on this just because we do have rotating people coming out every year. So the first one would be the examining board. What the examining board does is they actually, when there is a vacancy in the assessor's office, they are notified by the Department of Revenue and given a list of qualified applicants. And they go through those applicants, do some interviewing processes, and then actually recommends a person to the conference board. And so that's sort of what the examining board does. And the conference board, you guys are responsible for those 3 members, which right now we have, moving down. Terry Steinlights, Doug Kroll, and Teresa George. And you've talked to all 3 of them, and they all want to stay on as long as you guys still want them to stay on as the examining board. And typically they just stay on until someone says they don't want to do it anymore, and then we have to find a new one. So that's the examining board. Any questions on that?
You know, both of them.
Yes.
I will make most of them. Down.
All right. Motion by Mark, second by Rick to have the examining board remain the same. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, well, we thank those people for their continued service. Pay so well.
Actually, they don't get paid. That group
Well.
doesn't. Board of Review does, but they don't.
All right, deputy.
Yeah, basically, assessor's responsible for appointing deputies and chief deputies. And so this year, Judy has been my chief deputy since I became assessor. I appointed her 6 years ago. And her term is up, and so I'm just gonna be reappointing her again. So that's what, for another 6-year term, even though I think she's gonna retire way before then, but I don't know how many more years I can get out of her. So basically, I don't know if that needs to be approved or a second, but
If that's an appointment by you.
Yep.
no, then
okay.
It's just an appointment by you.
No, if I wanted an additional, then.
Yep.
Correct, so. So basically then, oh, I guess the next,
Just keep rolling.
okay.
You're fine.
You got the sales ratio review, but let's go ahead and go through the pamphlet now. If you want to, just, it goes through, gives the school board members what the rules of conduct are. The duties of the conference board. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look at that. Are there any questions about what I've given? Are put in here regarding the duties of the conference board? If there is, go ahead and ask questions. If not, we'll keep moving on. Okay. Then it just goes into the assessor and the different associations that are related to my position, that help support me in the position. And then the duties of the assessor, it goes into that. So once again, is there any questions on the duties of the assessor?
Well,
No, okay. You wanted me out of here in 5 minutes, don't you?
maybe they do.
And then it's just some information on what qualifies as assessor, what makes the assessors different from elected and appointed officials. It's a very unique department that actually Department of Revenue set up. And so it's just trying to educate on the differences between the assessor and elected and other officials. So if there's any questions about that. No? Okay, the next one is sales ratio. And if you turn to this page right here, so they got yellow on it. That's what our sales ratio is for this year. It's the median and it's right in the middle. It's 92.9. The Department of Revenue makes us be at what that property is going to sell for. So it does an average, and we're supposed to be between 95 and 105% of what that property would sell for. So this year we're doing good. We're at 92.9. That means that prices, values aren't off the wall again. Last year, we all know the last 2 years because of COVID, housing was going for a lot higher, and we are at like a 76%. That means our values last year and the year before were somewhere around 26% too low. When that happens, the Department of Revenue comes in and says, hey, your values are too low. They actually make us raise the values to 100%. And so it's all driven by the Department of Revenue on what that house sells for. It doesn't matter what you paid for. It doesn't matter how much you have into it. If you put your house on the market today, what do you think you'd get for it? And that's where we're supposed to be. And the Department of Revenue makes you do that. What we try to do, like if this was an equalization year, every 2 years we could equalize, and that's where we've got to be between that 95 and 100%. If we were getting equalized this year, which we're not, I'm at 92.9. If I didn't do anything, they would come in and raise everyone's values up to 100%. So everybody would get like an 8.10% increase. What I try to do, if it was me, I would try to get that up to 97%, 98%, but I would base it on areas. I have the means to go in and look, okay, what is Northwood selling higher than Kensett, or is Manly high, selling higher? Are certain districts selling higher or lower? And I can go in and raise values in just that area to try to get between that 95 and 105%. And that's what we try to do to make it more equal. If that's not done by the assessor, then the Department of Revenue just comes in and raises everybody across the board to 100%. So that's sort of how that works. Does it make sense? Any questions on that? So what this is showing is values aren't being as inflated, that 92.9. And it's interesting, so far we've had 60 residential sales this year. Last year we had 100. I mean, that's telling you the market is slowing down. That doesn't necessarily mean things are going for a lot less. I mean, they are because we're in a better ratio, but people are putting their houses on the market, staying, but they're not inflated. And they're usually sell for what they want. It just takes more time. And so that's sort of how the market has changed. And right now it looks like it's gonna stay that trend, which it needs to, because with COVID and low interest rates, housing was going for tremendously a lot more. So, and you guys probably all saw that with your assessment notices, that the values of most properties went up, and that's the reason why. So. Any questions?
Close comparisons only on residential.
This one here's residential. We do commercial and residential. So commercial, we don't have that many sales, 4 to 5 sales. So what the Department of Revenue does for commercial, they actually come in and do like 12 mock sales. They'll come in and look through 12 properties and say what they think the value, what it would sell for. And then they mix it in with the 5 I have. And then if it doesn't meet that 95 between 100 and 105%, then we have to raise values on commercial too. Yep.
Any other questions on the sales ratio?
And you can sort of see, you know, all the homes that sold, those 60 are in here. So if you want to go drive by, it's sort of interesting to sort of see what we had assessed for and what they actually sold for.
Does commercial come in between 95 and 105 too?
Yeah.
Just like residential.
Yeah, just like, and it's so hard for us because when you only have 5 sales, you can get distorted very, very quickly. That's why they come in and do 12 mock sales. To me, they're really not, they're still mock sales, but they are so experienced, the Department of Revenue in every state, that they know how to do it to where it's fair to the counties. So you get in bigger districts, you know, they have 50 commercial sales, so it's not an issue. It's pretty solid on your sales ratio. So the next one is your rollback and your levy example. And I thought I gave this example to hopefully explain. We go out and we value properties. Once we have that value, the state does a rollback. What that means is if 100% value is $100,000, the state will come in and say, give a 50% rollback. Well, they'll take $50,000 off of it. You only pay taxes on $50,000. So there's always a rollback that the state does. So you could have a $100,000 house this year, the rollback is 50, you're gonna get taxed on $50,000. Next year, you can have that $100,000 house, if the rollback is 60, you're gonna get taxed on $60,000. So there's always a rollback. Just because the value of the houses go up doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna pay more taxes. It depends on what the rollback is from the state. And it gets complicated, that's why I don't even understand the whole formula, but statewide values can't go up more than 3% statewide. And we know with COVID and the 2 prior years, values in every county and every city were going up by 15 to 20%. Well, the state won't allow that. So what they do, so it doesn't go above that 3% statewide, is the rollback. That's how they control it, is that rollback. And that's where, if you look at the example, and I'll just go off with the example, if you look at the top, and it's everyone on this page here. Okay. If you look at the top, and the actual rollback for 2022 was 56.19. So if that means if you had a $100,000 house, you're going to be taxed on 56,000 approximately. This year's rollback went to 46.34. So that means if you had a $100,000 house, you're going to be taxed on around 46,000. See, so that rollback really controls, even though your house hasn't changed values, what taxable valuation is going to be. So if you take the first example, and I tried to do different ranges, if you take your assessed value of 137,180, the rollback last year was 50, I'm just going to say 56. Taxable value, the levy, means you're paying $1,780 in taxes. Well, if your house didn't change with the new rollback, you're going to see the taxable levy. If the levy stayed the same, you're paying $1,068 in taxes. So the rollback really controls off the market what your taxable valuation is going to be. And the same thing, you can go down to the next example. And when you go over in taxes payable, the same scenario, you would have paid 3,463. Now you're paying 2,856. And even in the higher priced homes, I mean, it's the same rollback, it's the same levy. So on the higher priced house, it went down about $1,200 that you're paying in taxes. So when everybody saw your values go up by 20%, and I kept telling everybody that, because it's hard to understand, that doesn't mean your taxes are gonna necessarily go up. And it proved that to be true, because values went up statewide, they only can do 3%, so they gave a lower rollback. And so what I sort of predict based off of our new sales ratio, 92.9, is the rollback's gonna start etching up again, because they're not 20, I would say across maybe they're 10% up. So the rollback's gonna go back up. So that means that same $100,000 house, you're gonna be paying more in taxes than what you did for 2023. Does that sort of make sense? It's hard to grasp,
Is
but
the rollback a flat rate for the entire state based on property class?
the rollback is for the whole state. What's different is the levy, because every county, every city will
Yeah.
have a levy, and the levy's based off of budgets from the county, city, and the school districts.
But is it by class as far as commercial?
Correct. Correct, good question. Yes, it is. Commercial has a 90% rollback straight across the board. Residential gets a lot, they're trying to give breaks basically, and so their rollback is a lot lower, which is good. Good question.
Oh, but hasn't always been around, has it?
Yeah, it has been, and yeah. Yeah, I think it's been there forever. It's just changed probably in forms based on legislation and stuff like that, so, yeah. And the levies is what's different, every city has a different levy, every township has a different levy based off of the budget needs for schools and the cities and the townships.
Yeah, basically, like you're looking at 23 here, where you come to Manly, and we're probably paying like 32 or 33, because you're getting that city tax on top of it.
Yeah.
versus People out in the country are just paying the rural levy rate, so.
Which you usually see 23, 24, 25 out in the
Usually about a
township.
$10 difference.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Yep. So that's why when you see your tax bill coming up, because it's 18 months in arrears, so it's not gonna be as high as what you think it's gonna be when you saw your value of your property go up tremendously with this last assessment notice, so. But having said that, now, since things are leveling out, next year I predict that the rollback's gonna go up. So, and then that will affect taxes payable, so. Sort of makes sense. It's sort of hard to explain. Okay,
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling.
this is just, I think people get curious of taxable valuation, and so this is taxable valuation for all, well, there's 99 counties, but 4 of them didn't report yet because of different reasons, and so Worth County taxable valuation is number 21 on that side. Once again, that's just information.
The majority of those under our county and southern New York State.
Yeah, the lower valuations, yeah, the southern states, yeah, it's right in the southern, right along the border to the west, typically anyway. Even though I'm surprised, like Winnebago has less than us, that just surprised me in that aspect, but in general, correct, they're,
They don't all go there.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
yep, yep.
Yep.
Well, just like Lake Mills, what company was there that just went out?
Larson.
Yeah, Larson, that affected their valuations big time.
Larson,
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just information basically. The assessor's fund balance is different than any other budget under county government. I'm gonna just go lightly on it if you have any questions, basically. The estimated budget changed a little bit, but say my estimated budget for this year is $368,000. The state wants us to, the Department of Revenue wants us to have a cushion between 30 and 40%. So that is, if we go over on our budget, we have the means to go and do a budget amendment and pull money out without retaxing the public. So basically, right now, if you look, my beginning balance, according to those figures, should be around 147,000. You go down to the yellow highlighted. We do have 165,000 approximately back in our fund account, but those are designated, 50,000 for legal. And then about 114,000 for a project, because we just did a revaluation with Vanguard. And they usually want that done every 10, 12 years. Department of Revenue controls a lot of that, depending on when they put out a new manual. So we've got that amount just held back. And so then that means right now, the beginning fund balance is 124,000, and it really needs to get up to 147,000, which it should do. How my fund balance will increase is if my budget is 300,000, if I only spend 260,000, 40,000 will go into my beginning fund balance. So this year, again, hopefully I'll be under budget. So that will help increase that fund balance to get me between, I'm probably at 30 now. I'd like to get to that 40%. And we do have $50,000 put back for legal. It's so frustrating. Poet has been protesting value since 2018. Has not come to court yet. It's a PAB case. They have done it to like, 16 counties. They basically come in and say, this is the value. They got tax reps and they want to cut it in half. Well, it's been denied, prolonged, almost really to where what did exist. I can't remember the legal term for it, but dismissed. Well, they file paperwork just in time to keep it going for another year. And it has not been tried in any of these counties yet. So we are just, until that case gets done, we just don't know legally where we're going to stand. If we end up having to get basically a survey done or a appraisal done, it's going to cost probably between $40,000 and $50,000. That's why I'm keeping that $50,000 back, because we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't want to be the first one to go to court. We don't want to be the guinea pig, because the first one that goes to court will probably set the stance for the rest of them. So
We have to pay our lawyers.
yeah, and we have to pay our lawyers. I mean, this is costing me, I paid some in advance last year, so you're not going to see the legal fees this year, but it's costing us $10,000 a year just to, and it's been going on since 2018. So it's really frustrating for small counties in that aspect. So does that, any questions on that? No? Okay. We move right along. And we've got the proposed budget. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to look at it. So instead of going line item, if you want me to, or you guys just, what questions do you have on the budget?
Just the only question I have, Cindy, and I know you guys have required training,
Yes.
so you got 12,000 in there last year, and you got 11,500.
Yeah.
You utilize all that?
Yeah, we do. We utilize it between all.
Staff and everything.
Yep. In fact, I've got last year's budget. Yeah, actually, I had 9,900 for last year, and we did 12,000 on training on that line item. And it will go down eventually, because what happens with the, I mean, we have to have so much training to start off with, and we have to have so much training each designation, but then they want us to get designated. The training that we have districts to where we've got 7 other counties in our district to where we do district training. They hold classes. We have to get classes for a designation to become a deputy, become a chief deputy. And you really want, the education, because I guess, I don't know if you can call it a burden or not a burden, but the Department of Revenue gives our department, the assessor's department, the burden of basically valuations, and valuations last in 2022, the assessor's department, because of valuations, brought in 86% of the revenue into the county. So you can look at it as burden, but we knew that burden come into it. Department, I wish it would be spread out a little bit to where other departments could bring in that type of money, but they don't. So education is key, because we keep learning value. I mean, just learning the industry projects we can do, get equity. So education is so important. So we just try to, if you got the ambition to do it, I think you're going to take your test pretty soon to become doesn't necessarily she'll become a deputy. It will have to be approved, but she's going to take the test, and it's not a fun test. And if she gets it. With Judy leaving, I'll probably be back and wanting to make her a deputy, but she's got to have that training. But I do see eventually it going down some, because once again, once you get your classes to become a deputy, become a chief deputy assessor, and then you get your standard 90 or 150 hours in, some of those classes will go down because you've already taken so many classes, so I do predict, hopefully, once you're in that spot, but it's still gonna be a good chunk of change every year.
Continuing education.
Continuing, yeah, it is. And it's pretty much, it's required, and it's hard now. The Department of Revenue didn't have the final say on who the assessor is and approving, but they go through criteria now, and so it's really tough. It's like every 6 years, you guys could renominate me, but appoint me, but it's in their hands, and we don't know, do they look at the education? What do they look at now to say, hey, no, she's no longer qualified to do it? And so that's something that we don't know, because it's a gray line, because it's been in place for 5 years, so we don't know what that criteria is, so.
I got a question
Yes,
on, starting off the top. You've got a 3.5% increase on your salary,
mhm,
from the 73,936, and
correct.
total was 3.2, so I don't see anything like 3.5 for an increase in salary, but underneath it, you've got $2,000 to bring your salary up to 75,936.
Yeah,
And then over on the right, you say ICA designation. What is ICA? What is that $2,000 do?
it is. If you go to, it's an ICA designation. It's the first designation you can pretty much get when you become an assessor, and they want you to get a designation within 5 years, because it's just like going to college. You can go for 2 years or you can go to 4 years, but that extra training, that extra knowledge, that extra business sense is why they want you to have designations. And so it's very intensive, and that's a lot of training to do it. And so basically it's another year of college, or it's another year of education, and the association honors that, because they pretty much can't say they require it, but they look at it, and the state looks at it, that it's
$2,000 increase is a standard across the state of Iowa.
it's between any designation is between 1,000 and 5,000. So yes, that's a standard that I would say everybody gets an increase because of a designation. I put 2,000 in there. I didn't put 1,000. I didn't put 5. I put 2,000 in there, and it's a major accomplishment to be able to be a part of the ICA and that designation.
And so then when you're figured next year, is your cost of living gonna be on 75,936?
Yes,
Or 73?
it'll be 75
So I'm gonna pay a cost of living on that designation.
Yes, you are. for the education of the assessor's department, correct? Correct. And it's not an easy thing to do, let me tell you, I've had many anxieties studying for those classes, and it's an honor with our associations too, like the ICA and the IA. Let me get them all strapped here. Our associations, the assessor associations, what's really neat about that is they're made up of assessors, and you work your way up to where the more knowledge you have, eventually you can run for secretary, you can run for vice president, you can run for president. And it's just a very supportive educational tool as you learn more to be able to go into those different positions in the association, because they are made up of assessors.
So you decided on the 2,000, but the conference board can go anywhere from.
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Down here, you've got a $3,000 increase on your data processing, and it says for change finder. We're still in the same contract that we've had over the last 9 years. We're going into the third part of that contract. Did we change something on there as far as resolution or anything? Where's the $3,000 coming from?
Well, that's a part of it. But every time we do a flyover, I have to pay that change finder fee.
Yep, I know that.
So since it's,
$3,000, I wanted to know what we changed.
well, it wasn't in last year's budget, the change finder. So I put it into this next year's budget, because that's when the flyover is gonna be.
How come it wasn't in last year? You've always paid it.
Well, but it's every 3 years. It's every time you have a flyover, so it's not every year. Like
No.
with,
On his Department 52, it comes in for a year.
but I don't do it that way. My department pays just for the change finder when that flyover happens. So it's that 6,700 every time that flyover happens. So yeah, that is different. I think it's such a less amount compared to the, the actual flyover. That's just how it was done. That's how Joel had it done back then, and we were just billed separate for it.
So it's on this year, or it'll be on this year,
Next-
but it will disappear after that.
Correct.
Because there is not a flyover.
Correct, and that's why that will adjust, and then postage went up because we have to actually, full assessment roll, next year, we have to mail assess, because if your value doesn't go up, we do not have to send assessment notices every year. But every equalization year, we have to send assessment notices to everyone. And so I lowered it last year. A lot of assessors just keep it the same, so you don't see this going up and down, and I may end up doing that. But that's why it went up.
Once every 3 years, and the change finder is like 62.
It's 67, I think 67, correct, and it's in that figure
So,
of that
okay.
contract. I just
So if
pay
you're
it
paying
different.
every 3 years. How come we didn't jump that $6,200? Is that what the change finder?
Well, I've got sort of data. Things have changed just a tiny bit, but if you look, good question. After the budget is all my data processing,
So 7,000.
and that's in there. So these are my expenses, and I really can't go any lower on all of those. So I've got the change finder. So my data processing is around 38. You'll see on the budget, just because these things are moving, like you guys know, to the very last second. If you'll notice, my proposed for where's data processing is 38. And that's why it makes up that change finder in there. And so next year, as long as anything else doesn't go up, I will take that change finder out. So my data processing should go down next year. The year after, because this is the budget for next year. So the year after budget, it should go down.
I still don't understand. If you're paying it once every 3 years, the cost on change finder is like 62.60. Why do we only have 3,000 there? But
So the.
Well, last year I
The
had,
data it's budgeted for 7,000. It's just that line item specifically went up by 3,000.
because if you look right here, last year's budget, it was 35,000.
the price of change finder didn't change.
Well, it's not just change finder though, like Snyder went up. I mean, you gotta estimate increases. So if you look at last year's budget, I had 35,000. This year I've got 38. So just looking at what contracts are coming in, I was able to keep it at 38. Instead of, otherwise, if I just added the change finder, that line item would be 42, but I don't think I need 42. And it's based off of my data processing on that next sheet.
Yeah, you've done everything where it just says change finder. And that's-
Right, I did that as, I did it as a tickler for me to remember why, because I wanted to explain, so.
That's part of the reason.
That was part of the reason.
It's part, I should have said part, okay,
I said change finder. And
yeah,
I should have said plus other things.
yep. And then I will, guys, next year, I know it's getting tiny, so I'll make sure not to make it so tiny down here, but, I'll just go through this, then if you have any other questions, just looking at the levy, our max levy, can be 0.675. And so our levy actually, because evaluations has been going down, which is a positive thing. In 2020 to 2021, it was 0.5217. The levy we're going into with this budget is 0.4811, which is, it's good to see the levy go down. It was interesting because we all had the revaluation, and that revaluation basically values went up countywide by $58 million because of that revaluation. Once again, if it wasn't a year where houses were inflating, you would see a lot more tax revenue off of that, but because they had to lower the rollback, you're not seeing the tax revenue off of that increase like you're going to see when the levy starts, when the rollback starts raising, you're going to see more taxable revenue off of that $58 million valuation that went up.
Line 8 there, insurance costs, have you gotten any indication of any increase? Come on.
Insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield. That usually comes from Jackie and I haven't heard of anything, so I just put in what was last year.
7.1%.
Is gonna increase 7.1%. Really? It's gonna go up 7.1%.
We thought that was cheap.
Okay, well, yeah,
And if we would have more participation in our wellness program, we could have lessened
okay.
that by about 3.
I wasn't in the loop on that one,
So,
okay. Normally she emails and so I haven't gotten anything, but I'm sure that's on our list to let me know.
yeah,
Okay.
we just approved it.
Okay,
Ryan was here like 3 weeks ago.
so then what that's gonna do is that's gonna affect, yeah, that will be, I'll have to raise that by 7.1%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you.
Bradley's a number guy.
What are we talking about? Vanguard project,
Yes.
is that like a separate fund then or something, right? I mean, I don't see the actual.
Yeah, it's a separate fund.
That what cost was.
Well, the last one, and I don't know what year it went into contracts. It wasn't me. I think it was with Jody, was it? No, it couldn't have been Jody. 2015, probably. So back when it was approved, the contract, they actually raised the levy and put a certain amount into that beginning balance fund. And so then, once the levy was raised, and I don't know how much they put into it, probably 2,000 just to get the initial shock. Well, then they had like 8 other years to add $20,000 a year, so it would get up to that $500,000. So basically, that's where that beginning fund, where we sort of got a little jump on it is, I've got $114,000 designated. I just don't know exactly. I don't have a contract signed. I haven't. And Vanguard yet, it'll probably be 2 years till we figure out what we're gonna do with that. It's something you don't want to jump into because technology changes so much. But I do see, that's why if my beginning fund balance does keep increasing, I'll just put more to that. And maybe we won't have to do a big levy hike to get 300,000, to start the process again.
Well, that's what, maybe this is what Bradley's leaning towards, but should we just start setting aside a little bit more money every year so that when that does come?
Well, we have 100, no, we haven't, because I know because it just got done, the revaluation just got done, and so it's sort of a breathing period, because once again, how much is the new revaluation gonna cost? Is there gonna be new technology? With the way new technology, are they gonna be doing it in 10, 12 years, the way they're doing it now? I mean, so I think having $114,000 to start was that was extra in my beginning fund balance. That's why I don't have that 40% is because I put that 114 designated to be later to a project. So that is something, we can start doing, especially as my levy gets lower. Maybe that's something, if it's still going to continue lower, we just start putting 20,000 a year. And, if it comes across and it's $1 million, which it probably will be but it actually paid, it got $58 million more in taxable, in valuation. But once again, it's not just that, it's making sure things are equitable, costs are equitable, things are missed, that it's to make equity across the county too. It's not just, oh, I want to get valuation.
The thing about it is gonna be that kind of money over 10 years
Mm-hmm.
that have taken the big jump and
Yeah.
then back down. I'd say we
Yep.
should look into setting
they-
some more aside every year.
And there are some counties that are doing it internal, and they hiring another employee full-time to start working on that, and you do it internal. When you're talking $1 million, that's an option we can look at in 3-4 years from now too. Weighing, outsourcing it compared to doing it in-house, so.
So what do you think we should look at setting more aside every year?
Station would be, are we getting any interest on that money?
I would have to ask, that's a good question.
Sure.
Yeah, I would think somehow we are, I'll have to
Commercial.
ask.
Commercial loan rates being 8-9%.
Okay.
Not bad, but.
Getting from the bonds. See, there's,
Well, if we're asking a property taxpayer to cough up money that they're not able to
Correct.
offset interest on.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't want it to sit stagnant.
I think that's what happened last time, that they hadn't set aside enough previous years, and that's why it was
yeah,
early on. I think.
That's a good question. I'll figure out how that works. I would think it's gotta be somewhere, placed somewhere, but yeah,
The Jake question.
I know, I'll ask Jake and I'll talk to him.
It'd be in the fund, but whatever Jake's investing for us.
Yeah.
It should be a part of it. And I know
That was mentioned, we wanted or something.
interest rates have really helped out on a lot of stuff with short-term investments, because they invest so much for just like 6 months at a time, I think it has basically, so that way don't ever short ourselves by the time to pay bills, but money that's just sitting in there is actually drawing some interest.
But now I'm curious on that whole process, so
Yeah.
I'll do a deep dive and understand that whole process. So thank you for bringing that up.
But I guess that's the question, do we wanna see that levy? It'll obviously levy a little bit, but should we put a little more something to build that fund?
We're gonna
You
have to
wanna
do
wait one
something
more year?
sometime. It's just, I haven't pushed it yet because it's still just so new and we haven't really talked about it as an association where it's leading, but we're gonna need it somehow. At some
They can
point.
wait a year, I guess, and find out more info, what you're.
Technically, no next one, I think it's something that we do.
For this year or next year, put on next year's agenda or this, okay, and I'll get more information and talk to the association and,
Just see what's playing out and what the neighbors are doing too, and,
okay.
speaking of long-term stuff, I guess, what about vehicle?
We're good there. I just looked at it. We got like 54,000 miles. I was thinking around 75 is a good point to do something with that. So, and that's something that I haven't been accruing back for. So that's something that
As I wondered, should we get like a vehicle replacement fund going?
I think that's a good idea to do.
And just so that levy goes just a little bit instead of a $50,000 jump for the vehicle.
Because right now where I get, anytime I don't spend my budget line, and my budget by the Department of Revenue, that's a good thing because it adds to my beginning fund balance. So we can rob Peter to pay Paul, where gosh, everybody else hits line item by line item. So right now in the budget, I've got $2,000 a year for maintenance on the vehicle. Well, of course, I have a pickup on that, but as it gets older, that's why you want to turn it in at like 75,000. So really that money is not being set aside, but if you want me to do a line item to start setting aside a certain amount, then I'll have to add it to the budget line.
I would, so I mean, it just, whether it's 5,000-10,000 a year, just because here in 2-3 years.
Yeah, well, 75 for probably 2 years, talking, okay.
I would say something, have it set aside like you have for your projects, vehicle replacement.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you want it in this year's budget or next year's budget?
Yes, I would start.
I'd start now.
I would too, just because our levy, I mean, that's not a reason to spend more money, but if you're gonna do it while the levy's low, because it still probably won't increase the levy to what it was. Even with these changes, it won't increase it, so. You want me to put 5,000 in then?
When we've got a vehicle, it's got some value to it, so it's not like we got to come up with 50,000.
Yeah.
Come up with 20 to upgrade or whatever, so.
So if there's 10,000 in there, trade in, we'll just see.
And then if we need a little more at the time, it's looking like it in that budget coming up, and we'll just bump it a pinch again if necessary.
And that's where the beginning fund balance, I can go and do a budget amendment and get that out.
Yep.
Of course, you don't want to do that, but that's
Yeah.
that's what it's there for,
Yeah.
so.
Has that been coordinated with Worth County vehicles in the past? They're not really separate, and then as part of this bulk purchase or anything volume.
We would get state bids, like we would any else, whether we buy 1 or 10.
And Jody did it last time, so I don't know what her process was, so.
And that changes constantly, because I know Dan with sheriff vehicles that we're on schedule with those, and trade-in values change and new values change because the vehicles, or Dodge comes in cheaper one time, or why they've been buying pickups is because the price compared to an Explorer is within 1,000. So. But
Oh, and I did want to bring up on the budget line with the chief deputy. to get her to 82%. And this is a prime example of why this year I was in a bad accident and was basically out 2 months. And by code, she has to come in and be assessor. She didn't have a choice. And so basically deputies are 80% of the department head salary. I want to get her up to 82. If I didn't have a chief deputy, what would have happened was the office can't go without a assessor. So the auditor would have to take on that title and get a stipend for it. And taking on the title would mean just taking on the title. The rest of the office would do the work. And that's the same with anyone. I mean, I couldn't go in and do the auditor's job. The auditor can't come in and do, but by code, you can't be without an assessor. So I want to get her up to that 82% because she deserves it. And every chief deputy does. And that's the difference is they have to come in and do it. Otherwise they can resign or want to become a deputy. But when they become chief deputies, they know that it's part of their job responsibility. So.
For some reason, I thought that was capped at 80.
Well, there's not a cap. But it's pretty standard and doesn't matter if it's assessors or treasurers or deputies, they try to get to 80%. And when you're chief deputy, that 2% difference is just recognition for that extra responsibility that you have. And I base that off of my wages before if my designation. So she shouldn't get it off of my designation because that was my work and my time. And
Any other questions on the budget? We're ready to take action on it then? While it's in our mind?
yeah, everything else is just more information from there on. So you can take it home and read it or.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion then to approve the budget with the changes of the vehicle replacement fund.
5,000, right?
Right, 5,000 of vehicle replacement fund.
Right. And then insurance was the other one, was it 7.1%?
And insurance, right? Adjustment for insurance.
And then by next meeting, I'll try very hard to get back on that interest, that question on the interest. So then we can,
That'll be our public hearing, right?
yep.
Okay. So I got a motion from Rick Schulbrock. For the budget after the
the change.
adjustments.
Okay.
Is there a second on that motion? Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor aye.
Can we do a roll call?
You're gonna have to do it.
We need it.
We always do.
We always do.
I know, at the budget hearing, we were probably.
Oh, yeah, we can do it. Then. I guess we can do it then.
As long as.
Because it's gonna change a little bit. So let's do it on the,
Yes, nays, I don't think there's any nays.
okay.
Okay, is there any opposition to that vote? All right.
Okay, because I think I need a vote from each unit.
Mm,
I need an aye, so I need an
No,
aye
mine,
from,
maybe you're right.
You're
I'm
right.
gonna do a budget.
Let's do it.
I apologize, we'll, let's do a roll call vote, that's my fault. I remember that now because we are only one.
21 vote.
do you want to read them or you want me?
You go ahead.
All right.
The list.
Joe,
Aye.
Kari?
Yeah.
Kim,
Yes.
Bradley,
Yes.
Kyle? Did he get off? Okay, Rick,
Yeah.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Corey,
Yes.
Doug,
Yeah.
AJ,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Enos.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
All right. Budget's approved pending hearing.
okay. We'll have another one. We gotta get it posted in the paper, so we'll get back with you guys. It'll probably be 3 weeks or something like that. And that should go quick.
Is that gonna be another evening one?
If you guys want, does that work? Best for everyone?
On a Tuesday,
Yeah, make it.
maybe on a Tuesday again. That one should go quick. We've gone through the meats of the so.
We're still in forum.
Correct,
We got-
yeah, we
Yeah,
definitely
we-
need a quorum, yes.
Yeah, we better do it an evening one if that's all right. If 6 is okay for everybody.
Okay, we'll come up with the date and we'll look at the,
And then we'll have to zoom option again, I guess, if necessary. So.
Yep, I'll get it in the paper probably not for this next one. the week after that, so then we have to do it within 10 to 20 days of the publication.
Sounds good. Is
Okay,
there anything else on the agenda? I know I kind of jumped you there, but
I think,
since it was fresh in everybody's mind, it's a good time to.
I think we're
no,
good.
I think we went through everything, so.
Says we're supposed to set a date and time, but I guess we'll leave that up to Andrea. Once the changes are made in the budget, then she can set the date and time for the public hearing and email us when you've got that figured out.
Will do.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I would take the motion to adjourn.
Was that Doug? Who was my second? Bradley, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you.
everybody.
It's nice having a good turnout.
It is.
Appreciate it, so.